ulcers and chronic peptic ulcers. Okay. What are the causes of acute peptic ulcers? Just we are revising priorly before starting of this
Stress.
topic. Yes.
Stress.
Yes. I am asking you acute peptic ulcers. What are the causes of acute peptic ulcers?
mm, Physiological stress.
Then acute ulcers. See, chronic and acute ulcers. Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
physiological stress. We call them as stress ulcers. No,
Yes, ma'am. Stress ulcers.
stress ulcers, also called as
Mm,
stress ulcers, also called as whenever there is a lot of burning and pain. We call them as yes, Curling's ulcers. We call them as Curling's ulcers, stress ulcers, acute stress ulcers. Any other causes of acute peptic ulcers? Causes of acute peptic ulcers? Yes.
Shock.
Yes, yes.
Shock and severe trauma.
Severe trauma shock. Rather than to this, infections and intoxications. Okay, intoxications due to drugs, any chemicals, intoxication due to alcohol, NSAIDs, drugs. Okay, so this causes intoxication and infections, various infections, Streptococcus viridis, then H. pylori are the pathogens which causes infections. Okay, so these are the main causes of acute peptic ulcers. Then chronic peptic ulcers, yes. Causes of chronic peptic ulcers. Anyone? Yes. What are the causes of chronic peptic ulcers? So chronic peptic ulcers, the first cause is hypersecretion of the gastric juice. Okay. Second cause is hyposecretion of this mucin, which is a uh, protective layer which proves protective enzyme for the delicate gastric mucous membrane. So whenever there is hyposecretions of mucin, this gastric mucosa get exposed towards the corrosiveness of the enzymes, okay, acidic enzymes. Then third cause is hypersecretion of pepsin. Fourth cause is the blood supply. Whenever there is depletion of blood supply in case of thrombosis or embolism, there will be ischemic necrosis and there will be formation of ulcers. Okay. Then hematogenous infections. So again, this causes the spasmodic reaction, spasm of the vessels. So it will give rise to again ischemic necrosis. Okay. So the organisms they are H. pylori or Streptococcus viridis. Then hormonal factor, commonly it is duodenal ulcers. They are commonly we can see them in the males than the females. In the females, if any female is suffering from any gastric ulcers, so in case of whenever there is pregnancy, these ulcers they get vanishes or they get cure, and then whenever at the end of pregnancy this again get recur. So there is definitely hormonal role in case of peptic ulcers. Then next cause is stress pathway, adrenal axis,
Acute
hypothalamic
peptic.
adrenal axis of stress that we discussed last time. Then next cause is again neurogenic theory, that is because of vagus stimulation. There is hypermotility of gastric wall, stomach wall, hypermotility, and there is vascular spasm causes ischemia. Okay, then chemical factors, that is food, whenever the patient is having any regular eating habits, that particular uh, proves fatal to that particular stomach wall. Okay, and there will be ulcer formation, degenerative changes of stomach wall. So irregular eating habits or eating with very stress, with hurry and worry again gives rise to ulcer formation. Okay. Then we discussed about the predisposing factors like age is there, sex, then habits of that particular person, genetic factor, that is hereditary, stress, blood groups. Okay. All these things, they are the predisposing factors. Now today we are going to discuss about the site of gastric ulcer. Okay. What are the sites of gastric ulcers? So these ulcers, they get formed, in last lecture we discussed that there are two areas, acid producing area and producing area of stomach.
Non-acid.
Yes, acid producing area is fundus. Okay.
Fundus.
Non-acid producing area, pyloric and cardiac zone. These are non-acid producing area. So where these ulcers get formed? At lesser curvature. Okay. At lesser curvature, that is pylorus and lesser curvature of stomach are the commonest site, which are non-acid producing area, but ulcers they produces in that particular area. Pylorus and lesser curvature of the stomach are the commonest site. Why this happens? Because of contraction of oblique muscle fibers, they form a groove along the lesser curvature. While contractions of stomach wall, while contracting the stomach wall, that particular lesser curvature part, there is formation of groove. When any food or liquid is taken and get exposed to more trauma, being without any protection of mucus coat. Okay, this part is without any protection of mucus coat. So the increased contraction of muscles and overaction of acid are the causative factors for acid formation. Okay, so there is large surface area present in that particular section, that is lesser curvature, because this section it is more working, that is contraction, while in contraction there is groove formation in that particular region, which is there is less protection of mucus coat in that particular, or mucin secretions in that particular area. Okay, so easily get exposed and exposed to more trauma. If any degenerative changes are already present in that particular region, they can easily get transferred into ulcer formation. Okay, that is the reason why this ulcers they get formed in the lesser curvature more commonly, because this part is although it is non-acid producing part, there is more muscular action happens in that particular region, more grooves formation. So in that particular area, that if the food remains for more time, so it will create the degenerative lesions in that particular part. Okay. Then morphology of gastric and duodenal ulcers. Okay. Grossly peptic ulcers are commonly solitary. That is, they are single, present single in 80% of cases. Small, they are small, that is 1 to 2.5 centimeter in diameter. Round to oval and characteristically punched out. Their boundaries of these ulcers, they are punched out. Okay. So this is the gross appearance of gastric or duodenal ulcers. So these ulcers, they are solitary, that is single. Diameter is 1 to 2.5 centimeter in diameter. They are round or oval. Okay. The ulcers may vary in depth from being superficial to deep ulcers. They may be superficial or they may reach up to the peritoneal surface, so cause perforation. In about 10 to 20% of cases, gastric and duodenal ulcers are coexistent. They are coexistence. We could not get differentiate easily which are gastric and duodenal ulcers. Both they are present at a particular area, that is duodenal, first part of the duodenum, and at the pylorus part. Okay. Majority of peptic ulcers are benign. See, majority of peptic ulcers, they are benign. They are not malignant. They are not cancerous. Okay. So majority of peptic ulcers, they are benign in nature. Chronic duodenal ulcers never turned malignant. But chronic gastric ulcers may develop carcinoma in less than 1% of patients. So gastric ulcers, they can develop carcinoma, but not, although the duodenal ulcers, they are chronic, they will not get into the malignant transformation. These are large, bowel-shaped and elevated or indurated mucosa at the margins, which are carcinomatous, that is gastric ulcers. These ulcers, they are large, they are bowel-shaped ulcers with elevated or indurated mucosa at the margins. What is induration? That is along with the inflammation, congestion and inflammation. And the thickness of that particular mucosa also, it is more. So we call it as induration. Induration is nothing but the increase the thickness of margin or that particular area with congestion and inflammation. So the ages of that particular ulcers, they are elevated ages. The ulcers, they are bowel shaped, they are large and with induration, okay, at the margins. Now, microscopically, there are 4 zones. Microscopically, there are 4 zones. Histologically, microscopically and histologically, there are 4 zones of this ulcer. The first zone is necrotic zone. It lies in the floor of ulcer and is composed of fibrinous exudate containing necrotic debris and few leukocytes. So all the inflammatory changes, they happened already in that particular zone, necrotic area. Before necrosis, there is inflammation, no? Degeneration along with inflammation, and then there is necrosis. What is necrosis? Yes, anybody?
Death, cell death.
Cell death.
Cell
Okay,
death.
permanent changes that occurs with the cell. These cells could not get
Irreversible change.
recover. Okay, permanent illness. But degeneration, it is a sort of which illness? Temporary illness. Okay.
Reversible.
Yes. So whenever the necrotic changes happens, that changes, they are permanent. So the necrotic zone lies in the floor of ulcer. The floor of ulcer, there is necrotic zone, that is the tissue, dead tissues. They form the floor of ulcer and it is composed of fibrinous exudate. Because of formation, this get covered with the fibrocytes and there is exudates because of the secretions containing the necrotic debris. That is, what is the debris? That is the dead tissue material. We call them as debris and associated with few leukocytes in the necrotic zone. Then second zone is superficial exudative zone. It lies beneath the necrotic zone. Superficial exudative zone, it lies beneath the necrotic zone. Okay. The tissue element are show coagulative necrosis. Here the tissue element shows again the necrotic changes. Underneath to that particular necrotic zone, it is moreover exudative zone. Exudates are released in that particular zone. Then third zone is granulation tissue zone. It is seen merging into the necrotic zone and it is composed of non-specific inflammatory infiltrate and proliferating capillaries. So granulation in the whenever there is granulation zone appears, there is new formation of the tissues. Okay, there is new blood vessels, they appear in that particular region. So after inflammatory infiltrate, there is formation of new capillaries, proliferating capillaries. And fourth zone is a zone of cicatrization, that is thick layer of granulation tissue. It is composed of thick fibrocollagen scar tissue over which granulation tissue rests. So fourth zone is zone of cicatrization. It is the thick layer of granulation. It is nothing but the thick layer of this granulation, which this granulation zone, it extends below and they form a thick layer of granulation tissue. Okay. So we call them as the zone of cicatrization. which is composed of the fibrocollagen tissues with scar formation. And this on this scar there is this granulation tissue, they rest usually. So microscopically these ulcers, they are having four zones: necrotic zone, superficial exudative zone. See, please remember these zones whenever we are discussing this particular things. This histology is very very important with this particular uh, uh, ulcers. Okay, gastric ulcers or duodenal ulcers. So these ulcers, they are having microscopically, there are four zones present in that particular region: necrotic, superficial exotic zone, exudative zone, sorry, granulation tissue zone, and zone of cicatrization. These four zones are present in the gastric or duodenal ulcers. Okay, now we are going towards next topic, important topic. Here we ended with our topic of peptic ulcers. Okay, in peptic ulcers we discussed about what are the ulcers. The ulcers, they are nothing but the crater like lesions. Okay, the ulcers which get exposed to the gastric juice are known as peptic ulcers. Okay, now there are two type of ulcers: gastric ulcers and duodenal ulcers. They are commonly found in the lesser curvature. Okay, and duodenal ulcers, the common site is in the first part of duodenum. Okay, now acute peptic ulcers, chronic peptic ulcers. Acute peptic ulcers, the causes, they are infections and intoxications with stress, and if they are present in the female, we call them as, if they are associated with burning, lot of burning and pain, the stress ulcers, we call them as Curling's ulcers, and commonly found in the young females. Okay, that part we discussed. Then we discussed about the causes, etiology of chronic peptic ulcers. Then we discussed about the site of common sites of ulcers, why they are at that particular site, that reason we find out, and then we discussed about the histopathology of ulcers. Okay, now we will go towards the next pathology of intestine, small intestine, that is typhoid ulcers. Okay, after peptic ulcers, we are going to discuss about typhoid ulcers. Okay, okay. So this particular disease, it is in two parts. In pathology, I am going to discuss with you the pathology of typhoid fever and how these ulcers, they evolved in the small intestine. That part we are going to discuss today. But the next part, the prior to that particular pathology, the part of typhoid, that is enteric fever, is very very important. It is given in your microbiology book, that is Salmonella typhi. You have to study about the Salmonella typhi, that is the bacteria. Okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
that particular you have to study by your own, or after joining your college, uh, sir will going to teach you, Thura sir will going to teach you about that particular bacteria. Okay, so we are going to discuss now about the pathology, pathogenesis of typhoid fever. Okay, so what do you know about typhoid fever? Here you are looking in your screen, that is there is white coating of tongue. These are the characteristic features of typhoid fever. Okay, white coating of the tongue, then there is,
Enlarged liver and
yes,
spleen.
yes, then enlarged liver and
Ulcers in
spleen, ulcers in the
intestine
intestine, rash over on the body
on
and
the
the
body.
abdomen. Okay, and this is Salmonella typhi. To get this Salmonella typhi
Bacteria.
infections by contaminated food and
Food and water.
contaminated water.
Oral
Food
route.
and water.
Yes, food.
Transmission through
Contaminated
oral
water
route.
and contaminated food. We get this
Water.
Salmonella typhi inside our alimentary canal. Now we will going to discuss about the pathway by which this particular bacteria enters in your system and how it will create the ulcers in the small intestine. That thing we are going to discuss now. Okay. So these are the characteristic features of enteric fever or typhoid fever. That is, there is, why this tongue is coated because of some disturbance in the abdomen. Whenever this abdominal disturbance is there, this particular thing appears on the tongue, white coating tongue. Okay, it is a sign of some disturbance in the digestion. Okay, and these are the features, characteristic features of this typhoid fever: enlarged liver, that is hepatomegaly, splenomegaly, then ulcers in the stomach, and rash on the body. Okay. Now, enteric fever. The causative organism of enteric fever is Salmonella typhi. Salmonella typhi is a causative organism of this particular pathology. Now, there are two infections caused by the Salmonella typhi. The first infection is food poisoning, and second infection is enteric fever. Okay. First is food poisoning and enteric fever. Now, this Salmonella typhosa produces typhoid fever. Okay. And Salmonella, the other strength of the Salmonella is Paratyphi A, Salmonella Paratyphi A, and Salmonella Paratyphi B. They are responsible for paratyphoid fever. Okay. This Salmonella Paratyphi A and Salmonella Paratyphi B, they are responsible for paratyphoid fever. And Salmonella typhosa, they produces typhoid fever. Now, the pathogenesis, important part now, pathogenesis of typhoid fever. Now, this organism enters in your body from oral route. Okay, that is through contaminated food and water. Now, this organism enters through lymphoid tissue, either tonsillar or intestinal. It does not deglute with your food and enters into your stomach. It is not like that. This particular organism, it always enters to the lymphoid tissues. Okay, either tonsillar or intestinal. Then this particular organism, it passes to the duodenum. From that lymphoid tissue, it enters into the blood circulation and then passes to the duodenum. Okay, and again reach up to the small intestine. From duodenum, it reaches up to the small intestine. Okay, where in the small intestine, this particular organism, it get phagocytosed by our defense mechanism. Monocytes and leukocytes, they get phagocytosed and multiply in the mucosa of small intestine, especially at the solitary lymphatic nodule, or we call them as Peyer's patches. Okay, either they grow in the solitary lymphatic nodule or in the Peyer's patches. Okay, after phagocyting and multiplying in the mucosa, okay, of small intestine, especially where they get multiply, and in the nodule,
Solitary lymphatic nodule or
Peyer's patches. Then they reach the bloodstream via lymphatic vessel. From lymphatic nodule or from Peyer's patches, they reaches up to the lymphatic vessel. Understood up till now? After entering this
Yes, ma'am.
organism from oral route, but whenever it enters in the oral route, it enters either through the tonsillar lymph nodes or either intestinal lymph nodes. Okay. Then it passes where it grows and passes to the duodenum by the circulation and then reaches up to the small intestine. Here it gets phagocytosed and multiply in the mucosa of small intestine and it reaches up to the lymphatic vessels, bloodstream via lymphatic vessels. Whenever it enters into the bloodstream, it reaches up to the thoracic duct, which opens into the left subclavian vein. Okay. Now, organism reaches to the, whenever it enters into the left subclavian vein, it reaches from the heart circulation, it reaches in the whole bloodstream. Whenever this bacterium, it enters into the first time, it enters into the whole bloodstream, this phase is called as transient bacteremia. Okay, this phase is called as transient bacteremia. At this stage, the organism are rapidly removed by RE cells, reticuloendothelial cells of spleen, bone marrow and liver. So these reticuloendothelial cells, they try to remove that particular bacteria. But while trying to remove that bacteria, this organs itself, they form a principal foci of this infection. This organism, because this organism is very much virulent, this RE cells of liver, spleen or bone marrow, they get this particular entry of this particular organism, and this organism grows in that particular organs, liver, spleen and bone marrow. So these three organs, they are principal foci of infection. Why there is enlargement of spleen and liver? That is the reason of this enlargement. Because of growth of this organism, it particular in that particular uh, organs. Okay, because of this particular organism grows, Salmonella typhosa grows in that organs, and there is because of this reactions, inflammatory reactions, pathological reactions, this growth of this organism, growth of this particular organs occur. Okay, so they become a principal foci of infection. Organism multiply in these organs, and in the RE cells of also it grows in the reticuloendothelial cells of the mesenteric lymph nodes during the incubation period of 14 days. There is incubation period of still that particular person is not having any symptoms. Okay, still at this stage, not even in the transient bacteremia. Okay, whenever this organism reaches in the bloodstream, that person, it may be a symptomless. There is no symptoms of particular actual disease of enteric fever. But these organs, whenever they enter second time from the circulation, they enter second time in the circulation, that is after 14 days, we call them as secondary bacteremia, which is of more severity. These organs multiply in this organism multiply in these organs, and RE cells of mesenteric lymph nodes, they require 14 days to grow, to multiply, and there is secondary bacteremia occurs. Again they enters into the circulation. Okay, so it happens, which is very, very severe form. So this makes the onset of actual disease. That is the symptom of continuous fever, abdominal pain, there may be diarrhea. Okay, so these are the symptoms of this particular disease. There is body ache, there is fever, which is continuous type of fever associated with abdominal pain, diarrhea. Okay, like that. So these are the symptoms of actual disease. So whenever this appears after 14 days, so whenever the symptoms appears at the first time, this phase is called as secondary bacteremia. Okay, so before, you have to ask the patient if there is any exposure before 7 days or 14 days prior to get this particular symptoms. You will definitely get the history of any.
Ma'am, your voice is breaking.
My voice is breaking. My voice is breaking.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Not.
Now you could hear
Coming.
me properly.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so should I repeat whole the pathogenesis?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so Secondary bacteremia occurs and the actual disease symptoms appears. Okay. Now the organism reach to the small intestine and produces reinfection of Peyer's patches. Whenever this bacteria enters second time in the circulation, it again reaches to the small intestine and reinfect the Peyer's patches, that is solitary lymphatic and the solitary lymphatic follicle. Okay. So the transferred, there are sites after infection, second time infection of Peyer's patches. There may be the symptoms like ulceration, hemorrhage, and perforation. We are talking about the typhoid ulcers. Okay. Now it is associated with lymphoid aggregation, which is more marked in the cecum. So this is the pathogenesis of typhoid fever or typhoid infection. How this typhoid organism of typhoid fever enters in your system and how it infects the small intestine or the lymphoid follicles of small intestine, Peyer's patches of small intestine, and how this pathology changes. So this particular we are talking just now about the pathology of pathogenesis of this particular infection, typhoid infection or enteric fever. It's also known as enteric fever. See, in this picture you can see the part associated with this ulcer formation. These are the ulcers. Terminal ileum and colon, Peyer's patches, that is oval ulcers. They forms, the base is slushed, the mucosa is black, and the margins, they are raised or indurated. See, these margins of ulcers, they are raised and indurated. So this is morphology. Now we are going to discuss about the morphology of this particular disease. Okay. Now see, infections, this is the infectious disease, typhoid fever. So acute enteric infectious disease, it is enteric, that is it involve the intestines. So we call it as acute enteric infectious disease caused by Salmonella typhi. Clinical features: prolonged fever, which is associated with relative bradycardia. It is associated with relative bradycardia. First of all, there is tachycardia, but later on there is bradycardia,
Bradycardia.
which is associated with apathetic facial expressions. Roseola is a rash, then splenomegaly, hepatomegaly, and leukopenia. These are the clinical features of this particular disease. And whenever this particular things become chronic, or whenever the resistance of that particular person is very much less, so it leads into intestinal perforation and intestinal hemorrhages. Okay. Now we are going to stop this lecture here. I'm again call the second meeting in few minutes. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Then we will study the pathology of this particular disease. Okay.